All right, so I'll go ahead and call the Wednesday, October 13th, 2021 regular meeting of Santa Cruz Lafco to order. And we'd like to welcome the members of the public and directors of the board for joining us today. So we'll go ahead and move on to our first item, which is roll call. And so I'd like to ask the staff administrator to conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. So we'll start off with Commissioner Jim Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Roger Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Ryan Coonerty.
Here.
Chair Justin Cummings.
Here.
Commissioner Francisco Estrada.
I'm here.
Commissioner Zach Friend, not present. Vice Chair Rochelle Lather, not present. Alternate Commissioner Ed Banks, not present. Alternate Commissioner Yvette Brooks, currently not present. Alternate Commissioner John Hunt.
Here.
And alternate Commissioner Manu Kodig.
Here.
Chair, we do have a quorum, and I will note, since Commissioner Zach Friend is not here today, Commissioner Manu Konig will be our voting member this morning.
All right, thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, the executive officer's message. The executive officer may make brief announcements in the form of a written report or verbal update and may not require commission action. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our executive officer.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep this brief. I just want to remind everyone that this meeting is being conducted using the Zoom webinar. Under this protocol, commissioners and staff will have complete control of their webcams and microphones. You can enable it or disable it. For the general public, their microphones and webcams have been disabled, but they still have an opportunity to view and hear the entire meeting. Members of the public will also have an opportunity to address the commission on any agenda item. And they can do that two ways. They could send an email to staff and we'll read their comments on their behalf, or they can raise their hand on Zoom and they can press *9 if they're using the teleconference. Once they get identified, they'll have up to 3 minutes to address the commission. And for any commission action, staff will conduct a roll call vote. Chair, that's my quick update. I'm happy to answer any questions. I will note that for the record, Commissioner Yvette Brooks is attending us this morning. So good morning, Commissioner Brooks.
Good morning.
All right, are there any questions from board members at this time? Seeing none, I'd like to see if there's any questions from members of the public on our virtual meeting protocol. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to our next item on our agenda, which is the adoption of the minutes. The commission will consider approving the minutes from September 1st, 2021 regular LAFCO meeting. I'd like to ask if there are any questions or edits in the minutes from any of the commissioners. Okay, hearing none, I'd like to see if there's a motion on the staff's recommendation as shown.
I'll move that motion. Second.
So was that a motion by Jim Anderson, seconded by Roger Anderson?
Correct.
Yes.
All right. If there's no further questions or comments from commissioners, I'd like to ask the executive officer to conduct the roll call vote.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Jim Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Roger Anderson.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Ryan Coonerty.
Aye.
Commissioner Francisco Estrada.
Aye.
Commissioner Manu Konig.
Aye.
And Chair Justin Cummings.
Aye.
This motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, oral communications. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the commission on items that are not on our agenda. I'd like to ask the executive officer if he's received any written comments or requests to address the commission on non-agendized items.
I did not receive any written requests, but I do see a hand raised. So I'm going to unmute the individual. Is this Ms. Becky Steinbrenner? Hello, you are unmuted.
Good morning. This is Becky Steinbrunner. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Good morning to you all. I would like to just address the commission on a couple of items. One does relate to fire, but is not really part of what will be discussed later, and that is that the Central Fire District is moving along on their district-based board of director elections, but the public meetings have not yet occurred. So I am hoping that those will be happening soon. I understand there's been a bit of a time crunch with getting everything ready, but I'm looking forward to those district-based elections and the public meetings leading up to them. Central Fire is also still in the midst of renegotiating the contract with County Fire, CAL FIRE for response in my neighborhood on Redwood Drive in Aptos, as well as Nicene Mark State Park and the Mesa Grande Road over off of Vienna Drive. That must be done by the end of this year. The contract will expire at the end of this year. So that also is to be before the Central Fire District Board next month, and hopefully it will pass swiftly. The last issue I want to bring to your attention is that SoCal Creek Water District's project, Pure Water SoCal project, has again been majorly changed and in fact is quite a different project than it was originally, or even as the first change was made. Now all treatment will take place at the Chanticleer site directly across the street from the Sheriff's Center. I have many concerns about it, namely that now all of the effluent brine from the reverse osmosis treatment, as well as all of the cleaning and disinfection byproducts, some of which are carcinogenic, will now be directly deposited into the Santa Cruz City wastewater treatment outfall pipe and go directly to the National Marine Sanctuary without any treatment at all. Well, it is easy to say that this project
1 minute left, Ms. Becky.
Thank you. This project will remove millions of gallons of treated sewage water from the bay. The water will be removed. The contaminants will not, and will in fact be deposited in a very concentrated manner with added contamination to the pipe directly into the bay. There is a rupture in that pipe 65 feet offshore. The city is aware of it, and the State Water Board is taking enforcement action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair, I don't see any other requests to address the commission at this time.
Okay. With that, we'll move on. We'll close our public comment or oral communications period, and we'll move on to our public hearing. Public hearing items require expanded public notification per provisions in state law, directives of the commission, or those voluntarily placed by the executive officer to facilitate broader conversation. Today, the item on our agenda, we have countywide service and sphere review for fire protection services. The commission will consider the adoption of a service and sphere of influence review for the 13 fire service providers in Santa Cruz County. And with that, I will turn it over to the chair for the presentation of this item. Or sorry, the executive officer. Yeah, excuse me.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. Well, commissioners, under the adopted multi-year work program, this commission directed staff to analyze 19 local agencies under 4 separate service and sphere reviews. The countywide fire report is the 4th and final review of 2021. So we did it, we made it, but I digress. So this report analyzed 13 local agencies that provide fire protection, which cover the entire county as shown on your screen now. The full report has been available on Lafco's website since mid-September and provides a detailed evaluation of each agency. For purposes of today's presentation, staff will summarize some key findings for each fire service provider. So we begin with Aroma's Tri-County Fire Protection District. This district was formed back in 1951, and as the name points out, it currently serves 3 counties with 1 fire station, and they have 9 full-time employees. Their service area covers approximately 40 square miles with a current population of approximately 6,000 people. As the map shows, less than 20% of the district is located in Santa Cruz County. When it comes to ranking and comparing with the other fire agencies, they are in the low range. It has an ISO rating of class 4. So an ISO rating is used by insurance companies to determine the coverage of a house and to see how they're protected. And it's by ranking. So 1 is the best. They are fully protected, and 10 being the worst. They have no fire protection. In this case, Aroma's Tri-County Fire Protection District has a rating of 4. It has the second lowest number of fire vehicles in their inventory. Lafco staff identified 20 different types of vehicles used in this county, and Aroma's only has 5 of them. And it has, and out of all the 13 agencies, it was the only one that did not provide Lafco their call data. The district currently meets the state standard of 2 minimum firefighters on duty, but it does not meet the national standards of 4 minimum firefighters on duty. The district is financially stable and experienced an annual surplus during the last 6 fiscal years. And this is primarily due to the ongoing contract it has with CAL FIRE to provide fire services. Their average total expenses are around 1.3 million, and it has a fund balance of approximately 2 million, so almost double their budget. Based on the report's findings, staff is recommending that the commission reaffirm the district sphere for the Santa Cruz County portion. Next, we have Ben Lomond Fire Protection District. The district was formed in 1929 and currently serves approximately 7,000 people within 7 square miles. As the map shows, the district has 1 fire station. It currently has a full-time fire chief, 1 part-time staff, and 30 volunteers. When it comes to ranking and comparing with the other fire agencies, they're in the middle range. It has an ISO rating of class 3. It has 10 fire vehicles, and it has the second fastest average response time of 5 minutes. However, it currently does not meet the state or national standards when it comes to firefighters on duty. The district is financially stable and has experienced an annual surplus during the last fiscal years. Their average total expenses are around $732,000, and it has a fund balance of approximately 2.3 million. Based on the report's findings, staff is recommending that the commission reaffirm the district sphere with the condition that the district coordinate with Lafco to determine their future service area. As the map shows, the district sphere goes beyond their jurisdictional boundary, but it has remained unchanged since 1976. Next, we have Boulder Creek Fire Protection District. This district was formed in 1923 and currently serves approximately 5,000 people within 18 square miles. As the map shows, the district has 2 fire stations. It currently has a full-time fire chief, 1 part-time staff, and 43 volunteers. When it comes to ranking and comparing with the other fire agencies, they are in the mid to low range. It has an ISO rating of 4, it has 7 fire vehicles, and it has an average response time of 6 minutes. However, it currently does not meet the state or national standards when it comes to firefighters on duty. The district is financially stable and experienced an annual surplus during 4 of the last 6 fiscal years. Their average total expenses are around 1.2 million, and it has a fund balance of approximately 1.5 million. Based on the report's findings, staff is recommending that the commission reaffirm the district sphere with the condition that they also coordinate with Lafco. As the map shows, their sphere goes beyond their jurisdictional boundary and has remained unchanged since 1994. Next, we have Branson 40 Fire Protection District. This district was formed in 1950 and currently serves approximately 1,700 people within 9 square miles. As the map shows, the district has 1 fire station. It currently has a new temporary part-time fire chief, 3 full-time employees, and 13 volunteers. When it comes to ranking and comparing with the other fire agencies, they are in the low range. It has the lowest ISO rating in the county with class 5, has 7 fire vehicles, and it has the average response time of 8 minutes. It also does not meet the state or national standards when it comes to firefighters on duty. The district is financially stable and experienced an annual surplus during the last 6 fiscal years. And this is primarily due to Scotts Valley Fire Protection District taking over internal operations during that timeframe. This contract between the two districts has recently expired on September 30th. At present, their average total expenses are around $1 million, and it has a fund balance of approximately $948,000. Based on the report's findings, staff is recommending that the commission reaffirm the district's current sphere. As the map shows, it shares a sphere boundary with Scotts Valley Fire Protection District, meaning that these two districts should be consolidated in the foreseeable future. This combined sphere has been in place since 1994. Staff continues to encourage the two districts to consider this option to ensure the adequate level of service in both communities. Next, we have Central Fire District. This district was formed earlier this year as part of the consolidation between Aptos La Selva and Central Fire Protection Districts. It currently serves approximately 90,000 people within 55 square miles. As the map shows, the district has 7 fire stations. It currently has 1 full-time fire chief, 100 full-time employees, 1 part-time staff, and 3 seasonal employees, in addition to 10 volunteers. When it comes to ranking and comparing with the other fire agencies, they're at the top range. It has the second highest ISO rating you can get with Class 2. It has 21 fire vehicles and has the average response time of 6 minutes. It currently meets the state standards, but not the national standards when it comes to firefighters on duty. The district is financially stable and is expected to have an annual surplus going forward. Their average total expenses are around $35 million, and it has a fund balance of approximately $29 million. Based on the report's findings, staff is recommending that the commission reaffirm the district sphere. And as the map shows, the sphere does go beyond the district's jurisdictional boundary. Next, we have CSA 4. This district, which is operated by the county, was formed in 1966 and currently serves approximately 250 people with less than half a square mile. As the map shows, the district has 1 fire station and it currently has 6 full-time employees. When it comes to ranking and comparing, they are at the low range. It has an ISO rating of Class 4. It has the lowest number of fire vehicles with only 3, and it has an average response time of 10 minutes. It currently meets the state standards, but not the national standards when it comes to firefighters on duty. The district is financially stable and experienced an annual surplus during 5 of the last 6 fiscal years. And this is primarily due to the ongoing contract it has with CAL FIRE. Their average total expenses are around $1.4 million, and it has a fund balance of approximately $944,000. Based on the report's findings, staff is recommending that the commission adopt a 0 sphere, as shown on the screen. This means CSA 4 should be dissolved and concurrently annexed into CSA 48. Speaking of CSA 48, this is our next county-operated district. It was also formed in 1966 and currently serves 24,000 people within 261 square miles. As the map shows, the district has 10 fire stations. It currently has 9 full-time employees, 24 seasonal employees, and 73 volunteers. When it comes to ranking and comparing, they are in the middle range. It has an ISO rating of 4. It has the most number of fire vehicles with 29, but it has the slowest response average time of 14 minutes. It currently meets the state standards, but not the national standards when it comes to firefighters on duty. The district is financially stable and experienced an annual surplus during 5 of the last fiscal years. Again, this is primarily due to the ongoing contract with CAL FIRE. Their average total expenses are $3.3 million, and it has a fund balance of approximately $6.2 million. Based on the report's findings, it's recommended that the commission reduce the district sphere as shown on the screen. This indicates that the area served by the district, shown in green, but outside their sphere, if approved, should be detached and concurrently annexed into a local fire district. We're almost done. We're almost there. Next, we have Felton Fire Protection District. It was formed in 1946 and currently serves approximately 6,000 people within 6 square miles. As the map shows, the district has 1 fire station. It currently has 1 full-time fire chief, a full-time staff, 3 part-time employees, and 32 volunteers. When it comes to ranking and comparing with the other fire agencies, they are in the mid to low range. It has an ISO rating of 4, it has 8 fire vehicles, and has an average response time of 8 minutes. But it currently does not meet the state or national standards when it comes to firefighters on duty. The district is financially stable and experienced an annual surplus during 5 of the last fiscal years. Their average total expenses are around $711,000, and it has a fund balance of approximately $2 million. Based on the report's findings, staff is recommending that the commission reaffirm the district sphere with the condition that the district coordinate with Lafco as let me show you the sphere boundary. As the map shows, the district sphere goes beyond the jurisdictional boundary, but has remained unchanged since 1994. Next, we have Pajo Valley Fire Protection District. It was formed in 1995 as a result of a fire consolidation between Freedom and Saucepuedes Fire Protection Districts. It currently serves approximately 18,000 people within 47 square miles. As the map shows, the district has 1 fire station. We're seeing a theme here. It currently has 9 full-time employees and 1 part-time staff member. When it comes to ranking and comparing with the other fire agencies, they are in the middle range. It has an ISO rating of 3, has 6 fire vehicles, and has an average response time of 7 minutes. It currently meets the state standards, but not the national standards when it comes to firefighters on duty. The district is financially stable and experienced an annual surplus during 5 of the last 6 fiscal years. Their average total expenses are around $2.8 million, and it has a fund balance of approximately $1.5 million. Based on the report's findings, staff is recommending that the commission reaffirm the district sphere with the condition that it coordinates with Lafco to determine their future service area. As the map shows, the district sphere goes beyond the jurisdictional boundary and has remained unchanged since the 1995 consolidation. Next, we have one of 2 cities that have their own fire department. The city of Santa Cruz was incorporated in 1866 and currently serves approximately 68,000 people within 12 square miles. As the map shows, the city has 4 fire stations, which was built between 1940 to 1975. It currently has a new full-time fire chief, 60 full-time employees, 60 seasonal lifeguards, and 2 temporary staff members. When it comes to ranking and comparing, they're at the top range. It has an ISO rating of 2. It has the second highest number of fire vehicles with 22 and has an average response time of 6 minutes. It meets the state standards, but not the national standards when it comes to firefighters on duty. The difference is the city's fire department is not financially stable. During the last 6 fiscal year, it has ended in a deficit. Their average total expenses are around 20 million, but its revenue is only around 4 million. That being said, the city has a fund balance of approximately 54 million, which means it has more than enough to cover any expenses during that fiscal year. Based on the report's findings, staff is recommending that the commission reaffirm the city's sphere. As the map shows, the sphere goes beyond its jurisdictional boundary. Next, we have Scotts Valley Fire Protection District. This was formed back in 1958 and currently serves approximately 20,000 people within 21 square miles. As the map shows, the district has 2 fire stations. It currently has a full-time fire chief, 27 full-time employees, 1 part-time staff, and 15 volunteers. When it comes to ranking and comparing, they're at the top range. It has an ISO rating of 2. It has 14 fire vehicles, and it has the second fastest average response time of 5 minutes. It currently meets the state standards, but not the national standards when it comes to firefighters on duty. The district is financially stable and experienced an annual surplus during 5 of the last 6 fiscal years. Their average total expenses are around 9 million, and it has a fund balance of approximately 3 million, which is around 30% of their total budget. That's where typically special districts should be when it comes to fund balances. Based on the report's findings, staff is recommending that the commission reaffirm the district sphere. As we previously discussed, it shares a sphere boundary with Branson 40 Fire Protection District, meaning that these 2 districts should be consolidated in the foreseeable future. Next, we have the second city that has their own fire department, the City of Watsonville, which was incorporated in 1868 and currently serves approximately 54,000 people within 6 square miles. As the map shows, the city has 2 fire stations, which were built in 1978 and 1981. It currently has a full-time fire chief, 37 other full-time employees. When it comes to ranking and comparing, they are also at the top range. It has an ISO rating of class 2. It has 15 fire vehicles, and it has the fastest average response time of 4 minutes. It currently meets the state standards, but not the national standards when it comes to firefighters on duty. The city's fire department is financially stable and experienced an annual surplus during 5 of the last 6 fiscal years. Their average total expenses are around 63 million, and it has a fund balance of approximately 39 million. Based on the report's findings, staff is recommending that the commission reaffirm the city sphere. And their sphere currently goes just outside the city limits. Last but not least, we have Zayante Fire Protection District. It was formed in 1957 and currently serves approximately 5,000 people within 18 square miles. As the map shows, the district has 3 fire stations. It currently has a new full-time fire chief, 2 full-time employees, 2 part-time staff members, and 28 volunteers. When it comes to ranking and comparing, they are in the low range. It has an ISO rating of 4. It has 7 fire vehicles, and it has the second slowest average response time of 11 minutes. It also does not meet the state or national standards when it comes to firefighters on duty. The district is financially stable and experienced an annual surplus during 5 of the last fiscal years. Their average total expenses are around 526,000, and it has a fund balance of approximately 671,000. Based on the report's findings, staff is recommending that the commission reaffirm the district sphere with the condition that they coordinate with Lafco to determine their future service boundary. As the map shows, the district sphere goes beyond their jurisdictional boundary, but there's also an area that shows that it should be detached and concurrently annexed into Scotts Valley Fire Protection District. In summary, Santa Cruz County has 13 local agencies that provide fire protection through 36 fire stations countywide. While the majority of the agencies are doing well, staff has determined and identified areas of improvement for each one. It would benefit the agencies and, more importantly, their constituents if the boards and staff strongly consider staff's suggestions. I said it before, and I'll say it again. I want all our cities and special districts to succeed. This report is meant to be a tool for that to happen. Now, it's up to the affected agencies to take action should they choose to. But it would be a disservice if Lafco did not conduct such a thorough review of each agency. That is why the report highlights what's working and what isn't, with potential solutions to consider. After publication of this report in mid-September, staff did receive 2 correspondence. One was from Ms. Becky Steinbrenner, a member of the public. Her comments were more directed to CSA 48 and how it operates, but overall, she agreed with Lafco's suggestions for CSA 48. The other was from Don Jarvis, who was the interim fire chief of Atos-Acela Fire Protection District during the recent consolidation. His comments focus on Lafco's suggestion of a multi-district reorganization in the San Lorenzo Valley area and why some districts were included in that reorganization and why some were excluded. I wanted to note that that suggestion in Lafco's fire report was meant to trigger those very questions and for the districts themselves to explore the idea and determine which agencies make sense to consolidate, if consolidation is even feasible for them. That being said, both emails were shared with the commission and uploaded on Lafco's website. Staff appreciates the feedback from Ms. Becky Steinbrenner and Don Jarvis. And Chair, I also want to thank the 13 fire agencies for their input throughout the entire process, specifically the fire chiefs and their staff. At the beginning of the year, Lafco reached out to the 13 fire chiefs and retrieved all the necessary data to conduct our analysis. And somehow during their busy schedule, the district staff were able to review and provide feedback on the 300-page report before Lafco finalized it. I really can't thank them enough for their participation. Chair, based on the findings in the report and the feedback from the affected agencies and the public, Lafco is recommending that the commission take the following actions. Find the report is exempt from CEQA, determine that the report fulfills the requirements under Government Code Government Code Section 56.425, determine that the report also fulfills the requirements under 56.430, and that the commission adopt the resolution approving the 2021 Countywide Fire Protection Services Peer Review with the identified terms and conditions. Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I do want to acknowledge Pat O'Connell, who is in attendance this morning. He is the board president of Branson 40 Fire Protection District and would like to speak during public comment. But with that, I'll defer back to you, Chair.
Well, first of all, thank you for that presentation, and thank you for all the hard work that you've put into bringing this report forward. It's a very thorough report that had a lot of input from all the different fire agencies, and so I want to thank their staff and the fire chiefs as well from those agencies who helped bring this forward and provide all the necessary information for this document to come to us today. Before we open up to commissioners, I'd like to see if we can open it up for public comment. And so if there's any members of the public who'd like to speak to us on this item, if you could press *9 on your phone to raise your hand, we'll give you 3 minutes to address the commission.
Chair, if you mind, I'd like to allow Board President Pat O'Connell to speak first, and then we'll go to with the rest of the order.
Sounds good.
So, Mr. Pat, you've been asked to unmute yourself.
Right, unmuted.
Yep, there you go. We can hear you, Mr. Pat.
Okay, on September 29th, 2021, the board chairman of Branson 40 Fire received an email from Chief Whittle with a link to the Lafco report contained in a Lafco regular meeting agenda for October 13th. A copy was then sent to each of the Branson 40 board members by the chairman of the board. This was the first opportunity for any of the Branson 40 board members to review it. Previous to Chief Whittle's email on September 29th, which was just 2 days before the agreement for services ended, no one from the Branson 40 board had seen the report. Therefore, there was no chance to review, comment, or submit questions by the board. No one from Lafco or Chief Whittle reached out to any of the board members for feedback before the deadline passed. While these reports are typically sent only to the fire chief, this is an atypical situation. In the past, the fire chief of Branson 40 would have shared the document with the board, and there would have been a discussion in a board meeting. Upon review, the board of directors for Branson 40 found issues of concern. The conclusions did not appear to be unbiased. Currently, the board has continued to look at all options. It has hired a part-time interim fire chief. It has still established a list of goals with public input at a special meeting. It has set up a special committee from the community to help with long-term planning moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pat.
Thank you.
Now I'll unmute Ms. Becky Steinbrenner. Ms. Becky, you have up to 3 minutes.
Morning, this is Becky Steinbrenner. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Serrano, I want to thank you again for this excellent report. It's, I think, one of your best works. Very thorough, and I appreciate that you have used the ISO ratings to really, as you say, compare apples to apples across the board. So thank you for that. I did submit the written comment, and so I won't reiterate it all, but I do want to point out special consideration to a few items. Mostly the way that the money is being spent by CAL FIRE. Chief Ian Larkin is the Santa Cruz San Mateo Division CAL FIRE chief. He also serves as chief of County Fire Department. He has chosen to spend the recent augmentation of funding that came to CSA 48 via a special benefits assessment tax that has really bolstered the revenue. He has spent that on Type 1 engines. Type 1 engines are large and really outfitted best for structural fires, but they are in the trade known as pavement queens. That is not at all what CSA 48 needs. CSA 48 is rural, mountainous roads with narrow roads, sometimes narrow bridges to access properties. And so CSA 48 only has 2 Type 3 engines. These are the engines that are required for wildland firefighting, and in fact, what CAL FIRE takes when it goes out on strike teams to other areas of the state. That leaves County Fire with 2 Type 3 engines. When these resources are drawn down by CAL FIRE sending off their equipment and crews to other parts of the state, it really is up to the volunteers, the County Fire resources and volunteers to defend our rural areas, and they do a great job. But the number of volunteers has dwindled because of, in my opinion and my experience, the attitude of the CAL FIRE people toward volunteers. Yes, they are expected to go through the academy, but they are treated very poorly. I have personally witnessed CAL FIRE sending out their own crews on a County Fire engine and leaving County Fire well-trained volunteers in the station in Corralitos. That's unacceptable. And it's those kinds of incidents that really demoralize the volunteers, and that is what is happening here. We need to address that, and I don't know quite how to do it. The County Fire Advisory Commission has some
One more
ideas.
minute, Ms. Becky.
Thank you very much. So I hope that the County Fire Advisory Commission will weigh in on this. I understand that this report was not on their agenda when they met in September, and they will not meet again until November. I hope they submit comment. The public meetings at those commission meetings are stymied because members of the public are not allowed to speak throughout the meeting. They're only allowed 3 minutes at the very beginning and never again throughout the meeting. The funding needs to change. There needs to be an audit, specifically a performance audit. There is no accountability for any of the money that CAL FIRE gets from County Fire. The county has never done any audits. And the County Board of Supervisors has been negligent in not allowing Proposition 172 money or county sales tax money, Measure G, to fund any of the fire protection for County Fire. That is not acceptable, and instead the property owners have been even taxed higher. You can find none of that information on the County Fire website, and there is no information about CSA 4 at all on the County Fire website. The last
Becky?
thing I would like to say is that the Paradise Park neighborhood really needs to be annexed into the city of Santa Cruz. The grand jury has recommended this many times. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry I've run over.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Are there any other members of the public who would like to address us on public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission to see if any commissioners have questions or comments on this item. Commissioner Jim Anderson.
Well, I'd just like to commend Mr. Serrano for the fine job that he did on this. And just echo, ISO ratings are a measurement. And if you notice that the professional paid departments are all over 2, and most of the volunteers are 4. He mentioned that Branson 40 was the worst. Well, it's a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the best, 10 and they're at a 5. So the ISO ratings are all about training, water delivery, and how many people you have. And so as you can see that a lot of paid departments even struggle to meet the federal standards. But having studied ISO ratings as a fire commissioner for numerous years, a lot of the departments have improved over time, but it's kind of a moving target because the ISO rating criteria changes from time to time. But I think if you look at most of the districts, even volunteers are meeting response times and stuff, but where they fall short is the training. And the training is even difficult for paid departments nowadays because it just every year there's more and more training. So as far as water delivery, I think they all do better. The departments, Ms. Steinbrenner mentioned type 3 engines. Most all departments now have added the type 3 engines to their fleets and stuff. But I just want to make sure everybody understands that the criteria for ISO ratings is pretty tough.
Chair, do you mind if I provide some comments?
Sure, go ahead.
And I really appreciate Commissioner Jim Anderson's comments about the ISO rating. One of the reasons why staff decided to compare apples to apples is I want the district to see if they have a class rating of 4 or 5, to see why does the other fire districts have a class rating of 2 or 3? What's the difference? And I want them to be able to feel free to reach out to their neighboring districts and see the difference and improve themselves. So that's the whole point of this report. If there's areas of improvement, I want them to understand why it's an area of concern and the steps that they can do to improve. So that next time we do this service review, the agencies that have a class rating of 4 or 5, they'll be at 2 or 3, hopefully. That's the goal, to improve and constantly adapt and become better. That's the reason why I wanted to identify the ISO rating and other factors in this report to really help each other grow together, instead of just having that concept of, I have my fire district and it's me against the world. And the dynamics of that approach has evolved. And it's now of, we can work together and help each other improve collectively. I also wanted to just briefly touch on Ms. Becky's point about the fire vehicles. That's another reason why Lafco staff identified the different fire vehicles located throughout the county, and also describe what the difference between a type 1 is compared to a type 3 and a type 6, and how many type 6 vehicles are in the county and why is that? And so that's the reason why I wanted this report to cover all that information. So it's a one-stop shop. So the report can really show you, this agency here has 5 type 1 vehicles. This agency next door only has 1. Why is that? Can they share vehicles together? Again, it's identifying all that information in one report. And finally, for Mr. Pat O'Connell's comments about board comments, state law requires LAFCOs to create or develop these service and sphere reviews. The law does not require the agencies to provide feedback on draft reports. That's something that your staff does. It's an additional step that I do for transparency. I want to make sure that the analysis that I do is accurate. That's why I send a draft version to their staff to check the accuracy of my findings, to make sure that the information that they provided are reflected in the report correctly. It's not about providing comments on the findings. It's just making sure everything's accurate. And that's why I provide those reports to the staff, because that's what LAFCO staff does. We coordinate with other staff levels. We do not coordinate with the board members because their staff is representing the board. And so that's why I work closely with the staff members. But Chair, I just wanted to provide some brief comments, but I'll defer back to you. Thank you.
No, thank you for those comments. Let's see, I have Commissioner Koenig on deck, followed by Commissioner Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. Officer Serrano, I just wanted to follow up on that question a little bit about communication with the Branson 40 Fire District. So if I understand what you're saying correctly, that typically that communication happens, communicating with staff to make sure basically you've got all the numbers right. Is it fair to assume then that you were in communication with Chief Whittle, who was whose department was acting as staff for Branson 40 Fire Department much earlier than the late September date that Director O'Connell mentioned?
Yeah, so just to give you a quick time frame, LAFCO staff reached out to all the fire agencies in early this year, in January. And we sent out a survey requesting them to provide data. So that was the first time they heard about the report that was going to be presented in October. Between January and September, LAFCO staff went to all 13 board member meetings, either in person or Zoom, and informed them, this is what LAFCO staff is going to do. We're going to be analyzing your agency in accordance to state law. So LAFCO staff has gone above and beyond what's required to inform the agencies, not just Branson 40, but all other fire agencies about the report. And I kept providing them feedback at a board meeting or with their staff. So that's the transparency. I'm a huge advocate of transparency, and I've been trying to improve that for LAFCO as well. And so I was taking the show on the road, and I was coordinating with their staff and also attending their board meetings, letting them know about the report. I made it clear at the board meetings that staff will be providing a draft version. It's not required by law, but this is an additional step that I'm doing, and it's going to be provided to your staff to ensure accuracy. I've been saying that from the beginning, and I will continue doing that for all the service reviews.
Okay, thank you. One more question. Just curious why the Branson 40 volunteer base was so low. Is that just because the population that it serves is generally low, or is there some other factor that you saw in looking at the different fire agencies that would suggest why, what some do better than others as far as recruiting volunteers?
You broke up a little bit, so can you repeat that question again about the volunteers?
Yeah. The question is there anything in particular why that you see why the Branson 40 district volunteer base is so low? Is it just because of the population size, or is it also low? Is there a direct correlation there, or is there some other best practice that could be implemented in the district that you've seen work well in other districts?
So that's a great question. I would defer to the Branson 40 representatives, but this is a theme that I've seen in the last 10, 15 years. When I was with San Diego Lafco, that was the same issue that's happening now. Is the number of volunteers are decreasing statewide. So it's not just Branson 40, but Branson 40 right now, 15, 20 years ago, they had a large number of volunteers. But that's since changed, and now they have 13. A lot of those volunteers that they currently have on their books don't even live in Branson 40. And so it's kind of an issue, but they've attempted to address that. And one of the ways that staff has been recommending is that we encourage you to address this concern, but you should develop a plan. It's one thing to say that we're going to address it, but it's another thing to develop something in writing so you can have your milestones and be transparent with your residents to say, we're going to address this volunteers by these steps. And I think that's something that they need to do. But to answer your question of what's the factor, what's causing this number of volunteers to decrease, I don't know. Maybe it's job opportunities in other fire districts, but I don't have the answer for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have Commissioner Hunt and then Commissioner Roger Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd also like to recognize Officer Serrano for all the hard homework and hard work done to create a very good detailed report. Thank you. I'd like to ask Officer Serrano and the other commissioners about the next steps from this. We have 7 spheres that are conditional. We have 3 potential consolidations, and I think 2 departments with budget constraints. And I'm wondering how we prioritize and schedule our actions towards next steps. Are these things that we leave to the fire departments, or what do we as a commission and as staff do going forward? Thanks.
Chair, I'll take a stab at that. So great questions, Commissioner Hunt. As you've noticed this past year or so, LAFCO staff is being more proactive when it comes to these service reviews. And just because something has been the status quo for decades, that doesn't mean that it's going to continue to be the status quo. So I always question everything. So that's why these spheres of influence have conditions, because I don't want them to remain unchanged for another 20 years. I want to sit with those fire agencies and really speak with their staff to say, is there any intent to annex these areas in your sphere? If the answer is no, then we should reflect their sphere accordingly and reduce it, make it coterminous with their current jurisdictional boundary. But if there is intent to annex it, we should develop a plan, and we can do that together. We should work together. LAFCO should be seen as a resource and a tool. So that's why the next steps is to, after assuming that the commission approves this service and sphere review, LAFCO wants to work with those agencies, develop a plan to determine when these areas are going to be annexed. And is it going to be 2 years from now, 5 years from now, but something that's in writing. So again, we can have that as a strategic plan to move forward. And I would like to bring back these service spheres of influence back to the commission a year from now. And based on those discussions and those plans, we will update those sphere boundaries. So if there's no plan, then staff and the commission should consider amending their sphere boundaries accordingly. So there are next steps. And also this report, my goal is for the report to be a stepping stone for other special studies. I'm hoping that this report leads to other discussions and hopefully lead to annexations, lead to reorganization, something. I don't want this report to sit on a shelf for 5 years. I want this report to be used as a platform to have further discussions. And I hope that's going to happen in the next year or two.
Great. Thank you for those comments. And I shared similar questions to Commissioner Hunt. So thank you, Commissioner Hunt, for those questions. I've got Commissioner Roger Anderson, then Commissioner Ryan Coonerty.
Yeah, I first of all, I want to compliment Mr. Serrano on this very nice report. Not surprisingly, in a report of hundreds of pages, there are a few typos. I have brought some of those to his attention that I assume will be corrected before the final version goes out. The other questions I have are more along the lines of some trying to fit this into the more general context. The first thing is that I'm curious about how this county fares compared to other ones with similar fractions of rural and terrain as we have. How are their fire ratings, and how close do they come to meeting good Isil scores and the state and national standards? So that's one of the things that I'm interested in. The other question is a long-standing question. What is the connection between Isil ratings and insurance? I'm sorry that Mr. Banks is not here today, but basically the real question is, how much more am I likely to pay with an Isil of 5 compared to an Isil of 2? Now, clearly from the data that you have described, there are real advantages of living, first of all, in an incorporated city, which primarily means that there's a fairly dense group of buildings and people. But at the same time, it also tends to have streets which are easier to get to. You don't have to traverse through mountainous terrain. But there is that connection between Isil ratings and cost to the consumer. And then the other question I have is the question of fund balances. Now, this is something we can't fix with this report. But basically, what are the plans for these different agencies to use their fund balances? Some of them are very substantial, certainly much greater than the 30% that Mr. Serrano was talking about earlier. And so this is something that I think we should be looking at. I think it's too late to worry about those for this report, but certainly in the future, it's going to be very important. Thank you.
Chair, and I'll just add some comments. Commissioner Roger Anderson, great points. As you noticed, or as the commission noticed, this last 2 years, our service reviews have also evolved, and they're more detailed and comprehensive. And that's why I wanted to compare the agencies in one report. The question about comparing with other counties, I think that's a great idea. And that's something that staff can definitely do in the next go round. That way we can compare it at a greater scale. So I do appreciate that comment. The other question, and I lost my train of thought. What was the last point that you had, Roger Anderson? Oh, yeah, the fund balance.
Fund balance, yeah.
Yes, based on staff's analysis, some districts have capital improvement plan or project plans in place, CIP plans. Others don't, and I think that's a missing piece that all the agencies, and that's one thing that Lafco staff will identify when we meet with the fire agencies, is to really determine, do you have a capital improvement plan in place or some type of strategic plan? Because those are the documents that really earmark funds for future infrastructure improvements or purchases of apparatuses. And that will help identify the funding in the fund balances or their reserves and really assign it accordingly. If they don't have a plan, then that money is kind of sitting there with nothing specific in mind. So that is a great way to address Commissioner Roger Anderson's concern about what are they going to do with that fund balance. And one way of determining that is by adopting a capital improvement plan or some type of strategic plan. So that's something that LAFCO will be encouraging as we discuss with those agencies.
Great. We'll move on to Commissioner Coonerty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to take a moment to appreciate Mr. Serrano. And, you know, this is a critical function that LAFCO performs to do this evaluation. Taking a step back, I think there's two big things to note here, right? One is the whole county is about 25% the size of the city of San Jose. But we have 13 fire departments and they have one. With people with response times and challenges of budgets and staffing, I think this is a valuable start to the conversation that I hope will push many agencies forward to thinking about how do we get better and more consolidated fire service to get better response times and stabilize budgets for the future. And then, you know, to the conversation around the number of volunteers, this is something in my 7 years on the board that I've seen dramatically happen in the communities of Bonnie Doon and the North Coast is as the nature of work is changing, and you went from people who were, you know, maybe working on farms or in timber or, you know, adjacent to their communities, and they could serve as volunteer firefighters. Now people are commuting or working in jobs where they can't just disappear or move or respond to calls when the time comes. And so there's more financial pressures on families to have to have both parents working full time and trying to balance everything. And then also the CAL FIRE requirements have continued to increase. Volunteer firefighter requirements continue to increase. So it's a major commitment by people who are already, you know, busy with life and the challenges of making a living in one of the most expensive places in the country. And so I don't see the volunteer situation getting better other than for CERT neighborhood response teams, which provide a valuable resource, but don't provide adequate fire protection. And so I'm hopeful that these reports spur a conversation and we can start looking at a better way to deliver these vital services. But thank you, Mr. Serrano, for engaging.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair, I did see a hand raised from Fire Chief John Walbridge. I'm going to ask him to see if he wants to provide comments. It's great to hear from a fire chief on this matter.
Sure.
Yeah, Executive Officer Serrano and Commission, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, sir.
All right. Yeah, I was getting ready to hop off, so mainly because of my own schedule. But I do want to also recognize Executive Officer Serrano as well as the staff at LAFCO for this excellent report. It does, you know, open up a lot of realms for discussion, ongoing, as well as finding future efficiencies. And so I really wanted to acknowledge not only the work that went into this report, but also the forward-thinking nature of the report, and also acknowledging the fact that you know, this can also open up other studies or other efforts regarding various levels of cooperation that I think that all of the commissioners' areas of jurisdiction or the commissions or boards that they're a part of can also be respectful toward or acknowledge that in governance we can find other efficiencies and make it better. I think there's always opportunities to make it better, and I look forward to the conversation continuing. I also look forward to meeting with Executive Officer Serrano and his staff to address the sphere specific to Central Fire District and what that entails. For me, it's an educational opportunity. I'm looking forward to the conversation, and those are the end of my comments, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
And Chair, I since we heard from Chief Walbridge, I do want to note that staff will be presenting our findings of this service review to the Central Fire Board District or Fire Board tomorrow at their board meeting. And this is going to be an opportunity for, I'm going to reach out to all the other fire agencies and offer that same opportunity for Lafco staff to present our findings at their next board meetings and to show the adopted service review to them. So again, it's different ways for Lafco to engage with the fire agencies, build stronger working relationship with them. And again, we have a common goal to ensure the most adequate level of service to their constituents. So if Lafco can help, that's something that staff wants to do. So I'll be presenting our findings at their board meeting tomorrow, and hopefully I'll present our findings to any of the other agencies that invite Lafco to their next board meeting. Chair, I do not see any other requests to address the commission at this time.
All right, well, thank you again for this report, and really looking forward to see what role Lafco can play in helping to facilitate broader conversations or any of the efforts with the fire departments moving forward from all these districts. If there's no further questions or comments on this item, I'd like to see if one of the commissioners might be able to make a motion on this item.
I'll move staff recommendations for approval.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion by Commissioner Jim Anderson, seconded by Commissioner Roger Anderson to move the staff recommendation on this item. Seeing no further hands raised for questions or comments, I'd like to ask the staff to do the roll call vote.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Jim Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Roger Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan Coonerty.
Aye.
Commissioner Francisco Estrada.
Aye.
Commissioner Manu Koenig.
Aye.
Chair Justin Cummings.
Aye.
Chair, this motion passes unanimously.
Great. Let's go ahead and move on to our next item of business. This is other business items which involve administrative, budgetary, legislative, or other personnel matters, and may or may not be subject to public hearing. The first item on our agenda for this is Countywide Parks and Recreation Service and Sphere Review update. The commission will receive an update on recent actions following the adoption of the Countywide Service and Sphere Review involving 4 park and rec districts. And with that, I'll turn it over to the executive officer for staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair. During the August meeting, this commission adopted a service and sphere review that analyzed the 4 park and rec districts in the county. Based on those findings, the commission adopted a 0 sphere for Alba and Opal Cliffs recreation districts as a precursor to dissolution. The commission also required the 2 districts to initiate the dissolution process or provide a detailed plan on how to turn things around. And the deadline for that was December of this year. Staff would like to inform the commission that earlier this week, we received an application from Opal Cliffs Recreation District to begin the dissolution process. So staff will be completing the steps for that matter. On the other hand, since August, staff has been coordinating with the Alba board and residents as they attempt to develop and submit a comprehensive strategic plan before the December deadline. They are taking, I do want to commend them because they are really trying to turn things around. They are addressing the vacancies on their board. They're working on developing a website. They joined CSDA. They provided me a draft copy of their strategic plan. I provided them comments. So they are attempting to rejuvenate their district. So there's still a deadline of December, and staff is expecting to receive that strategic plan in December. So we'll provide our feedback to the commission on that matter at the beginning of January. But Chair, this is just an update. This is an informational item. No commission action is required. That said, I've been happy to answer any questions once you open and close public comments.
All right, thank you for that presentation. We'll go ahead and see if there's any members of the public who would like to address the commission on this item. Looks like there's Ms. Becky Steinbrenner has her hand raised.
Yes, Ms. Becky, you have been unmuted.
Hello, this is Becky Steinbrenner. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for this update, Mr. Serrano. I am really quite pleased that the Opal Cliffs Recreation District has decided to go along with dissolution. It has been a very odd group, and the outcome of that group has presented many problems for the public access to the beach. And I think this will be a great improvement in public access, the funding of it, and better transparency for the community. So I applaud your work that initiated this effort for them to dissolve, and thank you for the update.
Thank you. Chair, I don't see anyone else wanting to address the commission at this time.
Okay. With that, we'll bring it back to the commission. Are there any commissioners who have questions on the item before us? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close this item and move on to our next item, which is Cal Lafco election and award announcements. The commission will receive an update on Cal Lafco's recent election and award announcements, and I'll turn it over to our executive officer for a staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Earlier this month, Cal Lafco conducted several business meetings and actions, including the annual election and award ceremony. As you are aware, the Cal Lafco board seats are assigned by regions. This year, there were 2 seats open for the coastal region, the city and public seats. Margie Moeller from Napa was selected as the city representative, and Shane Stark from Santa Barbara was selected as the public representative for the coastal region. As for the annual awards, I was a bit surprised that the fire consolidation did not win the Project of the Year award. That went to Napa Lafco for their involvement in affordable housing. But that being said, I still believe that the consolidation effort will be a model for future reorganizations. So I will continue to give them kudos as we move forward. But Chair, this is that concludes my update. This is an informational item. No commission action is required, but I'd be happy to answer any questions once you open and close public comments.
All right, let's go ahead and open up to the public. If there's any member of the public who would like to comment on this item, please press *9 on your phone to raise your hand.
Chair, I see no one interested in addressing the commission at this time.
Okay, are there any commissioners that would like to have comments or questions on this item? Okay, seeing none, thank you for that presentation. And we'll go ahead and move on to our next item, educational workshops. The commission will receive a verbal update on 2 upcoming educational workshops tailored for the independent special districts in Santa Cruz County. With that, I'll turn it over to the executive officer for the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, due to the high volume of positive feedback from the first educational workshop co-hosted by CSDA and Lafco, 2 additional workshops will be held in the coming months. The November 30th workshop will be a repeat for those that missed the August 11th session, which focused on the board member best practices. Then there will be a January 25th workshop that will dive deeper into the Brown Act and the California Public Records Acts. Both workshops will be at no cost to the board members and staff. And again, As we move closer to 2022, LAFCO will continue to explore other workshops. There were suggestions of having workshops for the public. That's something that LAFCO staff is interested, but once we get more information, we will present that to the commission. But for now, these two will be for the special districts in our county. Chair, that concludes my update. This is an informational item. No commission action is required, but I'd be happy to answer any questions once you open and close public comments.
All right. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to us on this item? I'm seeing one.
We do see Miss Becky. So Miss Becky, you've been asked to unmute.
This is Becky Steinbruner. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for putting on these educational workshops. I attend a number of different meetings, and I always feel that there is a need for better levels of understanding of how the meetings are to work with respect to the Brown Act. And so I really want to applaud you for doing that and hope that it can be at some point opened up to the public. And just because I didn't get to my phone quickly enough, I'm also surprised that the consolidation of the fire department was not project of the year, but it will always be project of the year in the Mid-County because we all know the difficulties and political challenges that were able to be overcome. So thank you very much for your good work.
Thank you, Ms. Becky. And Ms. Becky raises a good point. During this past year that we were sheltering in place and special districts and cities pivoted to virtual meetings, it gave LAFCO an opportunity to participate or attend those board meetings. And I did see a lot of board meetings that were not complying with the Brown Act, especially the executive orders and very common practices that are being omitted from those meetings that I think board members need a refresher, a reminder of what is required of those meetings to occur, what they can and cannot do. That's one of the reasons why LAFCO staff is conducting these workshops, because some board members, whether they're seasoned vets or new board members, should just be reminded of what is required of them during these board meetings. So that's why LAFCO is encouraging all board members and staff to attend these upcoming workshops. And Chair, I don't see anyone else requesting to address the commission at this time.
Okay, so I'll bring it back to the commission. Are there any commissioners that have questions on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll go, since this is an informational item only, we'll go ahead and move on to our next item, which is written correspondence. LAFCO receives written correspondence and other materials on occasion that may or may not be related to a specific agenda item. One of the items that we received through written correspondence is the Ucsc Environmental Impact Report response to comments. The commission will receive an update on the university's response to LAFCO's June 2nd, 2021 letter regarding UCSC's draft environmental impact report. With that, I'll turn it over to the executive officer for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair. For the past year, staff has been monitoring the university's long-range development plan and its draft EIR process. As you may recall, LAFCO submitted 2 comment letters regarding the proposed developments within that plan. For the most part, the proposed developments under the LRDP are located within the city of Santa Cruz. However, based on staff's analysis, the commission did identify 5 potential developments that are located within the campus, but outside the city limits, meaning that LAFCO action would be required if municipal services from the city are needed in those proposed developments. This position is consistent with the previous long-range development plan that was litigated and resulted in a settlement agreement indicating that the university does in fact need LAFCO's approval. That being said, the university's response that's attached to your agenda packet did indicate in their final EIR that they determined the university does not need LAFCO's approval should they develop in areas outside the city. It's staff's understanding that the city and the county under their task force continue to work closely together to address this and other issues. involving the long-range development plan. But for now, Lafco staff will continue to monitor their plan as it unfolds. Chair, this is an informational item. No commission action is required, but I'd be happy to answer any questions as you open and close public comments.
All right, thank you for that presentation. I'd like to see if there's any member of the public that would like to address the commission on this item. Looks
We do
like we
see
have
one hand raised. Ms. Becky, you've been asked to be unmuted.
Hello, this is Becky Steinbruner. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm quite amazed that UCSC regents, the regents of California, they can ignore you. That's rather egregious, and I hope that Lafco will reach out to local legislators to try to get some resolution on this, especially considering that it affects water service and sewer service. That's a very important topic right now, and will continue to be in the future. So I'm pretty amazed at the UCSC's response, but I'm confident that you'll handle it very well, Mr. Serrano. Your good work.
Thank you, Ms. Becky.
all right.
Chair, there's no other requests to address the commission at this time.
Okay. Are there any commissioners that have any questions or comments on this item? Okay, seeing none. I do have one question. I'm just curious in terms of, moving forward and kind of, the fact that Lafco has the position that the university needs to, to apply in order to, and clearance from Lafco in order to develop on these areas. However, with the university maintaining its position that Lafco, that they think that they don't have to go through Lafco, I'm just kind of wondering if there's any kind of timeline or expectation around when Lafco might need to engage with the university on this issue.
So that's a great question, Chair. It's staff's position that it's staff's understanding that there is a current lawsuit involving the university and the city. And I think one of the questions is, does the university need Lafco's approval in receiving services outside the city limits? And I believe as a result of that lawsuit, they may come to the conclusion that they reached a couple of years ago, where yes, you need Lafco's approval. I think after that lawsuit reaches the conclusion, I think at that point Lafco can take additional actions if needed. But it's staff's position that we'll most likely reach the same conclusion we did a couple of years ago. But at this time, I continue to take the position of Lafco should just stay on the sidelines and continue to monitor and see what the results of that lawsuit is. But I will defer to our legal counsel if he has any updates on that lawsuit. But that's been the position of Lafco staff at this time, unless the commission directs staff to do any additional steps.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Serrano. Actually, nothing to report on the lawsuit itself, just to let the chair and other commissioners and the public know that we're monitoring it very closely as far as the local, the EIR that was recently approved. And I hope to have something a little bit more substantive to report in the coming months. But right now we're kind of in a holding pattern. But yeah, no timeline, unfortunately. But as soon as we're able to report on anything that is substantive, I'd be happy to inform the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel.
Great, thank you. And thanks for keeping us up to date with everything that's been going on with regards to UCSC and the long-range development plan and their EIR. Next item on our agenda, item number 8 are press articles. So Lafco staff monitors newspapers, publications, and other media outlets for any news affecting local cities, districts, and communities in Santa Cruz County. Articles are presented to the commission on a periodic basis. Looks like we have one item, press articles during the months of August and September. The commission will receive an update on recent LAFCO-related news occurring around the county and throughout California. With that, I'll turn it over to the executive officer for a presentation on this item.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a presentation. This is just a periodic update to the commission. LAFCO staff just continues to search for any articles that may be of interest to the commission. But this is just an informational item, Chair. No commission action is required, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay. Are there any questions from members of the board? And actually, I should also open that up to public comment to see if there's any members of the public who'd like to comment on this item.
Don't see any, Chair.
Okay. Seeing no questions from the community and seeing no questions from commissioners, we'll go ahead and move on to commissioner business. This is an opportunity for commissioners to comment briefly on issues not listed on the agenda, provided that the subject matter is within the jurisdiction of the commission. And so I'd like to ask if there's any commissioners who would like to share or discuss anything that is not on our agenda. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 10, legal counsel's report. LAFCO's legal counsel may make brief announcements in the form of a written report or verbal update, and this may or may not require commission action. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our legal counsel to provide us any update if there are any.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to report today.
Okay. Seeing that there's nothing to report, we'll go ahead and move on to adjournment of our meeting. And so the next LAFCO regular meeting will be scheduled for Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021 at 9 a.m. If there's no further questions or comments, I'd like to see if there's a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Jim Anderson. With that, we'll close out our meeting. Thank you to the members of the public who were able to join us today. Thank you, commissioners and LAFCO staff. And we will see you all on November 3rd at 9 a.m.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Take care. Be safe.